All right. Welcome everyone. Thank y'all for your patience. We were working on some audio issues with Zoom, but we are now good to go. Let's see, just gonna give it a few more moments. Looks like we're good. Looks like we got everybody in. So just to start off, I'm just gonna go over some of the Zoom basics. Several ways you could engage with the session today. So if you look on your participants tab, you could raise your hand if you have any questions, and you may also use the chat function to ask questions. But thank y'all for joining us today. We are really excited to have our guest in honor of Veterans Day, and I will now pass it on to Brittany to give an introduction of our guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Rodolfi, and I'm so honored to be able to provide the brief introduction today. We have such a distinguished list of panelists, and truly there's no better way to learn about courage than from our military personnel. I feel very lucky to be able to work with military organizations on a daily basis and observe their unwavering commitment and courageous actions. At Spurs Sports and Entertainment, we're very proud to be friends with the local military community and always love opportunities to learn from others. So our guests today are from Brooke Army Medical Center, or BAMC. For those of you who are not familiar, BAMC is located at Fort Sam Houston and is part of the U.S. Army Medical Command. You've all undoubtedly seen their beautiful buildings and elaborate parking garages, as BAMC sits less than 4 miles from our AT&T Center. Several of you in this class, I see, have been able to tour or volunteer with us at the Center for the Intrepid, the Warrior Family Support Center, or at Fisher House, all located on BAMC premises. So you may not know that BAMC is the most robust and productive healthcare organization within the military health system. BAMC is staffed by nearly 9,000 soldiers, airmen, sailors, federal civilians, public health personnel, and contractors dedicated to providing outstanding care for our wounded service members and the San Antonio community at large. BAMC is the sole verified level 1 trauma center within the Department of Defense, and they provide emergency services to 80,000 plus visits annually, while also serving as the premier medical readiness training platform for both the Army and the Air Force. They have 40 designated hospital beds for the U.S. Army Institute of Surgical Research Burn Center. You may have heard of this world-renowned burn center and their ongoing mission to improve battlefield care for our combat wounded. BAMC facilities provide comprehensive care to over 240,000 military beneficiaries living in our area. On a typical day at BAMC, staff sees a dozen trauma cases, more than 60 admissions, 70 surgeries, and over 4,200 outpatient visits. So to say that logistically BAMC has a very large footprint would be an understatement. BAMC is continually recognized for superior treatment and care as the flagship of military medicine. If any of you ever get the opportunity to go take a tour of any part of BAMC, you'll certainly be impressed by their state-of-the-art equipment, technology, research, teaching, and care. Now, all of that brings us to our special guest today. When Morgan told me that she wanted to have someone from our local military community speak to us about courage, I immediately thought of BAMC and CFI. I knew that their public affairs folks would have some great ideas, so I connected her with Daniel Calderon, the community relations specialist at BAMC. So thank you so much, Daniel, for helping set this up. I'm going to give a few words on each of the 3 guests and hand it over to them to continue to share their stories. So first, we'll be hearing from the commanding general of BAMC, Brigadier General Shan Bagby. General Bagby took over with the most recent change of command and has an unbelievably long list of distinguished honors and medals. An incredible leadership portfolio. He has more degrees than I can count, and he's also an oral surgeon by trade. There's a lot of history taking place at BAMC, and General Bagby is a big part of that. Not only did he presume command during a global pandemic, he took over for BAMC's first female commander, General Harder, as she handed him the reins this summer, which made him the very first African-American commanding general of BAMC. Next, we'll hear from Command Sergeant Major Thurman Reynolds. Command Sergeant Major Reynolds joined the Army as a combat medical specialist. His journey has taken him all over the U.S. and overseas, with multiple stays in San Antonio, the home of the combat medic. Finally, we'll have the opportunity to hear from Specialist Ezra Maes. We wanted to let Specialist Maes tell his story, and really nothing that I could say would do that justice. All I can say is we're so appreciative of your willingness to be here with us today, Specialist Maes, and help us understand courage on a drastically new level. So, General Bagby, without further ado.
Wow, well, in conclusion, no, thanks, Brittany. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to everyone watching. I can't tell you how honored we all are to be part of this program. And we appreciate you taking time out of your day to tune in. As was said, I'm Brigadier General Shan Bagby. It's spelled S-H-A-N, but it's pronounced Shan. My parents had a sense of humor. And I'm joined by Command Sergeant Major Thurman Reynolds and Specialist Ezra Maes, as was mentioned earlier. I'm the commanding general of Brooke Army Medical Center, and some of you may be familiar with our hospital. And Brittany, that was a great job. Appreciate that. You could come give the command brief sometime because you described it perfectly. But in case you're not familiar, as Brittany said, BAMC is probably about the largest and busiest military hospital within the military health system. And we are extremely proud and honored to provide compassionate, patient-centered care to our approximately 250,000 beneficiaries, military, family members, retirees, and also civilian trauma patients throughout the greater San Antonio area. Now, we strive to provide safe, quality care in addition to those civilian emergency patients from communities across the 22 counties throughout our Level 1 Trauma Center region. And as was said earlier, we are the sole Level 1 Trauma Center in the Department of Defense. This means we are equipped to provide care for the most complex and traumatic injuries, which not only aids the community, but also hones our skills as military medics for combat casualty care. And that we exercise that on the battlefield and we train it at home. Now, our partners throughout the community are key to our mission success. We can't do any of this alone. We are extremely grateful to be situated right here in Military City, USA, which has provided the military and BAMC an unwavering level of support, and especially thrilled to be in San Antonio as the home of the Spurs. Go Spurs. So today, as was mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about courage, a quality that is often demonstrated by premier athletes. It takes courage to face down a strong competitor, and it takes courage to overcome your fear, whether it's fear of failure or fear of losing a game. Now, just as with athletes, courage is a virtue and a trait often associated with our men and women who wear the cloth of our nation. It's the reason that we raise our right hand. Now, some might think of courage as a lack of fear. I would disagree with that. I think that true courage is the ability to face your fears, sit with them, and act anyway, or the ability to overcome. Courage allows us to have strength in the face of fear or pain or grief. The author Mark Twain sums it up. He said, "Courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not the absence of fear." Now, Specialist Ezra Maes, sitting to my right, is a perfect example of someone who acted in the face of fear. And I won't go into the details of his story because we're going to hear from him very shortly. Instead, I'd like to share the story of a young man named Kyle Carpenter. This is a great story to share because today is the 245th birthday of the U.S. Marine Corps. Go Devil Dogs. Now, in 2010, Lance Corporal Carpenter and a few fellow Marines were manning a rooftop security position in Helmand Province in Afghanistan when the enemy initiated a daylight attack with hand grenades, one of which landed inside their sandbag position. Now, as was stated in his citation, without hesitation and with complete disregard for his own safety, Lance Corporal Carpenter moved towards the grenade in an attempt to shield his fellow Marines from the deadly blast. When the grenade detonated, his body absorbed the brunt of the blast, severely wounding him, but saving the life of his fellow Marines. His jaw and his right arm were shattered, and he lost his right eye and most of his teeth, and has undergone dozens of surgeries in an effort to recover, and in July 2013 was medically retired as a corporal. He is the youngest living service member to receive the Medal of Honor, which he received in June 19th, 2014. a great example of the kind of courage that we all strive to. But do you think he was devoid of fear or pain? No, I don't think so. As World War I hero Eddie Rickenbacker said, courage is doing what you're afraid to do. There can be no courage if you're not scared. Otherwise, it's just action. Lance Corporal Carpenter did what he had to do despite his fear, or even at the cost of his own life. And I think that's an extreme example of courage. However, courage can take many forms, is not always defined by life and death situations. I think that as people living in the world, we face examples of courage or opportunities to exercise courage every day, whether that's physical courage, the ability to do things physically that we don't believe we can otherwise do. If it's moral courage, the ability to stand up for what is right, even when it's unpopular. And I would also argue that intellectual courage is just as important. I think as a leader, I have had more opportunities to exercise intellectual and moral courage than I have physical as I get older, which is, I'm thankful for that. But that intellectual courage is the ability to admit when you're wrong, which is surprisingly hard for a lot of people. And it's a way that you can help grow. Now, I've seen tremendous courage by the team right here at BAMC and throughout this city in recent months. Our healthcare heroes, our first-line responders, and our frontline staff work essential jobs, and I know that they're scared, but they show up day to day to serve others. A lot of them are worried or fearful. Their kids are not able to go back to school. Some of their spouses in the community have businesses that have closed, but they still show up. And I think that when people are well-led and have a sense of purpose, they have a way of rising to the occasion, even in the most dire of circumstances. Now, this COVID-19 pandemic has been a tremendous challenge for all of us, but it's brought out the best in many of us in this hospital. I see this courage exhibited every day when I walk through the halls of this hospital, and I see it within the community. It's evident in our intensive care units where our healthcare professionals are working tirelessly to save lives of the sickest, most vulnerable patients we have. It's evident in our schools where teachers show up every day to provide their students with an education despite the risk of COVID-19. There are so many more examples to share, but I don't want to take up all the time. I'll stop here and turn it over to my battle buddy, Command Sergeant Major Reynolds, to share his thoughts on courage.
Hey, sir, thank you for that. And thank you for you all attending. And what a masterful articulation of what we do here at BAMC from the host. Thank you for those kind words. Courage. I've been humbled throughout my 27 years in the Army to have the opportunity to serve with amazing individuals like Specialist Maes and the story that the CG shared about the Lance Corporal. During my tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Bosnia, I witnessed courage firsthand and experienced, the trials and on my own courage as well, and just amazed at what our joint warfighters can bring to the table in regards to facing adversity and providing examples of courage like Specialist Maes. And so I didn't want to share a personal story of mine. I wanted to allow Specialist Maes the opportunity to take the time to share his personal story. And so without further ado, Specialist Maes, if you want to share your story with the group.
Absolutely. And I'd like to give a huge thanks to General Bagby and Sergeant Major Reynolds for the praise they've given me. And for all of you attending this today, I'm really honored to be in your presence. 4 years ago, I wouldn't have ever thought that I would have had the chance to be anywhere near this level of humbled and appreciated by my community and by my friends and family. So I'm going to kind of change the story around a little bit more than if any of you had seen an interview of mine going into this or whatnot, where it's just kind of the gory details and I'd kind of do a deep dive into what happened in my wreck. There'll still be some of that, but I'd kind of like to show some more about the courage in general, about the people around me who have also faced adversity through this, because while yes, I was laid up in a hospital bed for 4 to 5 months, I had family and friends around me that were doing things to take care of me in ways I could never imagine. So can we please go to the next slide? And we'll start off there. I'll wait on Tyler to go ahead and finish that one. Tyler, are you there? Thank you.
Yes, should be on the next slide.
Okay, I know where there it is. So this is all some earlier pictures from back in, on the left side in 2016 is when I enlisted. I was fresh out of high school, looking for any school that would basically take me with my C+ grades. I wasn't the best student. I didn't do well in sports, didn't do super well when it came to scholarships for money. And I didn't really have anywhere that was interested. And I came upon an Army recruiter who said, "Hey kid, how'd you like free college?" And I was all on board for that. And my original plan was I wanted to do some years in ROTC in college and then eventually come back and serve. But this was just more of a fast track to that. I would do my 3 years, come out, end up doing school on the outside. And I'd always respected any service member I'd ever met for their sacrifice and their choice for what they did. So I'd say that was my first kind of big, courageous step I'd made in my life. That was the first choice that really altered the direction of where I was going. It was straying away from all my friends and family and what was comfortable back where I was home to go off to train in Georgia, a godforsaken place with humidity and heat and bugs larger than your hand. But we made it. I made it through. I joined the Army as an M1A2 armor crewman, otherwise known as a tank crewman. I was eventually stationed in Fort Hood, Texas, just a few hours north of where we are now. And I served there for 2 years. We did training rotations countless times. About once a month, we were out there actually shooting the tanks. We were engaging in training exercises, meeting with joint forces to teach them how to operate on our equipment. And this was all leading up to a deployment that we had in 2018 to Europe. We were going to be joined by a few other NATO countries, such as Poland, Slovakia, Lithuania. There was some German troops there as well. And this is where my wreck eventually happened. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a few of my early hospital photos, but this was 5 months into deployment. We were doing a simple training exercise, nothing out of the ordinary, 2 days, 1 night of us just maneuvering, teaching some of the troops there how to work on our equipment and how to crosstalk with us. We would do field of fire exercises, teaching us how to engage the enemy from multiple locations with multiple countries and how we would communicate that back to our commanders. And in the middle of the night, after the second day, our tank began to lose control while we were sleeping inside of it. Me and 2 of my other crewmates, which you'll see on a few slides from now, were awoken to the tank free coasting on us. We had no power. We had no way to communicate to people what was going on, and we were trapped inside by the debris falling on top of the tank. We rolled down for what we guessed was about 1/8 of a mile when we approached a creek embankment where we hit, and our tank was basically split in half from top and bottom. When we all kind of regathered ourselves, my gunner had been thrown from her original seat down into an area where she had thought she had broken both of her legs and couldn't move. My driver was trapped where he was due to debris and was complaining about back pain, so immediately thinking he had a back fracture, and with a gunner with 2 broken legs and she was bleeding profusely from her thigh, I was the one that had to act. Like General Bagby had said, there's no such thing as courage without fear, otherwise it's just action. I was terrified. I didn't know what was going on. I'd never been in a situation like that in my life. I was 20 years old, for God's sake. But at that point in time, I didn't know how bad the damage was on my leg. I couldn't see it. It was caught up behind some debris as well. And all I knew is that my crewmates needed help really badly, and I was the only one in a position to do that. So that's more when I began to kind of push and pull to free myself from what I thought it was just a bad break on my leg. But when I finally freed myself is when I realized that my leg was gone completely from about my thigh down. At this point was definitely more of the fear engaged moment. I went from being, the only one that was healthy to help to I had a clock ticking. I was bleeding rapidly and I still needed to get my crewmates help. And so without a hesitation, I started to hop to the other side of the tank to grab tourniquets and medical equipment to stop the bleeding on her leg and to hopefully reach him so we could see how bad his injuries really were. And at the same time, also try to maybe do something for myself. But that one I wasn't as ready for that one. I didn't know what that was going to take. Let's see, do we have any pictures of the crew on this one? I don't think so. That's a little bit further back, so we'll stay on this one for now. We eventually were able to receive aid for all of ourselves, and then the next order of business was to communicate back to what was going on. We had stabilized ourselves for the time being, but we had both lost a lot of blood, and we didn't know how bad it really was. We were able to reach one of our cell phones and communicate back to the top of the hill what had happened, and within about 20 minutes, they had found us where we had crashed. this led to immediate medevac to us both going to a major hospital where they found out that my gunner had barely survived by about 1 millimeter or 2 her skin had protected her from bleeding out. And with me, it was about the same. It was maybe 10 minutes later, we wouldn't have been alive still. So it's incredibly thankful, but it was the most rocking experience you can ever imagine at that age. It was something unprecedented that I didn't join the Army for. I wasn't ready to go and I wasn't ready to give that at that point in time. I knew going into joining the military that it was a possibility. And so you always have a little bit of preparation for it, but until you're staring it in the face, it's not, you don't really process it completely. And to relate a little bit more back to courage in this scenario, it was after that I had tried to give some of the aid to my crewmates and I started bleeding out more profusely. And that's kind of when I got into my initial stages of shock. I was starting to be unable to communicate with people. And my gunner at that point had managed to free herself with a dislocated leg on her left side and massive cuts and gouges. She had broken her teeth in her face. She had cracked ribs, and she managed to crawl out to me to still check on me while I was bleeding. And she didn't know how many moments I had left. She had managed to fight that fear and find that courage inside of her to come and check on her crewmates, even though I would even say she was just as bad as I was at that point. We didn't know how long we had. And so she just wanted to be out there with me and check on me and make sure that we had done everything we could to that point to survive. Next slide, please. All right, so I was medevaced very quickly to a local hospital there in Slovakia, where I received basically just some stabilizing care. They didn't have the means to treat us. It wasn't level 1 trauma. So we were shipped out to Germany, where there was a large military hospital called Landstuhl, where they were able to do a lot more of the stabilizing. They were able to assess how bad my amputation was and what it was going to take for me to keep continuing on with my care. They knew I'd lost a lot of blood. They knew there were some other injuries with me, such as a torn shoulder, a broken leg. They didn't know what else was going to come of it. They were terrified of infection, which eventually did happen, as you can see here in a couple of these photos. The one bottom left corner with the man in the blue walking next to me was probably about my worst point. That was the first day I'd stood up after my injury, but that was when my infection had almost killed me by that point. I had a resting heart rate about 150, 135, which if people that haven't been around medical stuff much, that's high. That's way too high, especially to be walking. They were really trying to sit me down, but I was being way too stubborn for it. My family had gotten the word very quickly about my injury, and they had pretty much dropped everything in their lives to come down here. My mother's got 2 other sons at home, and my father doesn't work consistently enough, so she was the sole provider, and we didn't know how long she was going to be down here for. So she took a big leap of faith in coming down here to see that the Army would take care of her and would take care of me properly, and that they would find a way back home to keep continuing on with daily activities. And the most important story, and I'll wait until I get to her slide. You know what, we'll just go ahead and do that. So I was stuck here in BAMC and inpatient wings for about 4 months. This was in and out of intensive care units, step-down wards to see how my progress had become. But with every new surgery, the infection got worse, or my heart rate was getting higher, until we eventually found out what it truly was. We beat the infection, and then the recovery process really started. It was time to do things such as grafts to close up my leg. There was a lot of therapy that had to be done on my shoulder and my leg, and I'd honestly say some of the hardest moments that came through this was just daily activities of not necessarily just sitting in the hospital bed and having people bring you food, but learning to use an arm again for the first time that you had torn, or trying to walk on the only leg you have left, but it's still broken. Those were the ones that I was the most scared of. I went from being somewhat of an athlete, rock climbing and snowboarding every day, to not really knowing if my future was going to be bound in a wheelchair. I didn't know how bad this was really going to get, but I was able to push through it. You'll see here in the bottom right-hand corner is one of my best friends from my old unit had been coming down to see me pretty regularly, and his son had just been born about 6 months into our deployment, and so he got to bring him down for the first time for me to meet, which was kind of that one last good push I needed to get through my treatment process down here, was to realize that this wasn't going to be the end of the world, that this was just kind of a step in the entire process of it all that I was going to be dealing with for the rest of my life. Next slide, please. this is a few more of the, you'll get to see a little bit more of what the recovery process really looked like. So in the bottom right here is probably the most important person in my life, which is my grandmother. She had lost her mother right before I went on deployment, and she inherited a house all to herself that she had been growing up in and taking care of her family for years. And as soon as she heard that I got hurt, she instantly sold the house. She packed everything up into a big storage container and came down here to take care of me, not knowing what the future would hold, if she was just going to be living in hotel rooms or a cheap apartment until we could find her permanent living down here. She just knew that I needed the help, and so she took the biggest leap of faith I could have ever imagined. And I have all the thanks in the world goes to her. She showed me courage in ways that I never could have imagined. And while I was suffering in silence, there she was, just trying to help me along the way. So she's probably one of my biggest inspirations. Up in the top right corner, you'll see both of my crewmates in the wreck. On the left is Sergeant Sherry Crump, who also has a pretty riveting story, where she was a sergeant in the reserves, meaning she almost worked a part-time Army job, where she had a comfortable position. She worked an office job. She has a wife and a kid, and they were comfortable. And it kind of hit her one day that she wanted more out of this life. And so she showed phenomenal courage by being one of the first women to join active duty combat arms, to become a tank crewman. She was instantly an amazing mentor to all of us. She took to working on tanks, even though she had never really touched one. Like, she was born to do it. She became the first female tank commander, to my knowledge, a year after our wreck when she recovered. She is one of the most courageous and amazing people I know, and she's probably one of the only reasons I'm still here. And the man on the right was the driver, Victor Alamo, and he ended up breaking his back after going from being one of the most athletic people I'll ever meet, and he had a promising Army career ahead of him, to learning how to live with his disability as well. But he makes the best of every day, and from what I heard, now he's retiring from the military, and he's going to go pursue his degree here within a few months after getting out. Left side is a few more of the recovery process. The only sport I was ever good at being golf. It's not super athletic, I suppose, but this was my first day back at the golf course, learning how to swing for the first time. It might look good in the picture, but I promise the shot wasn't great. But hey, it still took courage. That was the one thing I was really like, hey, you know what? I think I can return to doing this. I think I can get back to my old self this way. And, you know, I did all right. And it's still something I do on occasion to kind of keep my head in the right spot towards this recovery process. It's, I don't know, it's definitely finding that outlet was the one way to kind of keep from those bad thoughts of coming in and creeping in all around you, saying, oh, you know, you're never going to return to that past life. You're never going to be who you were again. And it's like, well, that's all right. I can be something better. And then the bottom left is an entire family of people from the CFI that I know, that they all have extremely similar stories to me. And I'll kind of give a brief overview for a few. The man in the bottom was diagnosed with terminal cancer at 22, and he's been fighting it to this day, lost his leg, and is still fighting, even though they gave him an 8 months to live about a year ago. Another one in there was an Air Force Sergeant Major, I can't, what's their equivalent there, chief, it's an Air Force chief, who during one of his runs had collapsed, and basically it was, he had been working too hard to the point that the Army, his body started trying to kill him. And before ambulances found him, he was pretty much in a comatose state, and he survived it. They'd removed his leg, and now he's back to running and making everybody look bad when he's out there working out with us. So I'm jealous of the guy, but he's shown courage beyond anything I could possibly imagine too. And it's these kind of people that once you hear enough of these stories and get to really know these people deep down, and you see what it really takes to face something like this, you realize that it's kind of in all of us. And it's just, how do you react when that moment hits you? You never prepare for something like this. It's always just, how do you handle it in the moment, and how do you handle it from that point onwards? Let's get one more slide in there. I think this is the last, no, it's two more before the question forward. Okay, last two of the fun ones, I think. Yeah, the rest are recovery ones. On the left was the first time getting back to riding horses, something I did often as a kid, which was another one I was terrified I'll never get to do this again. It's just too far out of reach for me, but with some pushing from my grandmother, she convinced me to do this, and I kind of took that leap, and it turned out to be amazing. And it was probably one of the most impactful things I've had happen down here, just to see that life doesn't really end after an injury like this. And the other one was my romantic situation. And on the bottom right, you'll see my girlfriend, who was an E2 in the Marines when she found out she had cancer in her foot. She hadn't even made out of training yet, and she was already fighting something that could kill her. She got her foot removed about a year ago, and now she's competing to be in the Paralympics through Paralympic snowboarding and air rifle. So she's one of my hugest inspirations, and I just kind of I'm just in awe, and I try to aspire to be like her every single day. She pushes me further beyond than what I could have thought was possible. I mean, for me, what was possible for me to do, she kind of just pushes me a little bit beyond that, and she's incredible. I don't know what else to say about that one. Next slide, last one. So I wanted to end more on where I'm at today with this. A lot of the bigger parts of my surgery, my recovery process, obviously happened in the first year following my surgery, but here you get to see a little bit of me working with some of my physical therapists, working on learning how to walk again, and that was probably one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. It was learning to trust a leg again after having it cut on and washed out more times than I can possibly count. But you know, it's one of the most rewarding things in the world to be around people like this every day, that everywhere I look and turn, there's someone supporting us and pushing us through this program to make sure that we can be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And it takes courage from them to come into work every day and tell us and push us like they do, because they don't know how bad it's going to be. They don't know what their next caseload is going to look like. And, you know, some of these therapists I've been with for 2 years now, 2+ years, and get to know their stories inside and out. And, you know, it's just I'm getting all sappy here. It's an amazing community, and there's no way other to put that. The military community is extremely tight, and it's just, I don't know how I'm going to finish that now. That one kind of got me. So I just want to say thank you for you guys being here and giving me this chance to speak to you, and for all the support everyone around here has given us in my family through this entire process. And you know, it took a lot of courage to even reach this point, and with your guys' help, it's been that much easier. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing that story with us. And I'll tie in your story with the art of leadership and the character and action of facing adversity, that fear, but continuing to do the right thing and move in a positive direction. And, you know, I'm just continuously amazed and just humbled and honored to be able to serve with individuals like yourself. And there's plenty of joint warfighters, soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen like yourself that go through this process and then fight to get back, you know, back into active duty service, and then redeployed to put themselves right back into the environment that caused these injuries. And that's another form of adversity and having courage, not just to join the service, but to continue to serve after facing adversity like yourself. And so thank you, Specialist Maes, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
We're going to open it up to you guys now for questions. Anything to any one of us?
I can get us started off with questions. So I have a question for Specialist Maes. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's just truly incredible, and I guess it's really inspiring to hear where you get your inspiration from others, whether it's your girlfriend or your grandmother or all those people that have poured into your life. But I guess my question is, where do you go from here? I feel like I've heard in your story before, like you have inspiration to do something like the folks at CFI do, or things like that. Do you know what's next for you?
So a lot of that got put up in the air when COVID hit. I was planning on being out around January of this year, but with the pandemic creeping in, they kind of wanted to hold back on all my surgeries. And so a lot of those early plans that I had there was internships I had lined up, and I was planning on attending school this year, like this fall. A lot of that's been put on hold. I still have a few surgeries that I have left to do before I can truly be discharged from this program. but we're working towards that. I would still like to go back and get my degree. I've been into chemical engineering and mechanical engineering since I could remember in high school. So I'd really like to obtain that and kind of live the retired life for a little bit. It's been a hard 4 years, and I would like to kind of sit back and relax and enjoy some of my own time.
I think you've earned that.
Yeah, would hope so.
Yeah.
And when you say you think you can go back to school, I feel like you've proven you can do anything. So whatever degree or whatever you aspire to, I'm sure you'll be very successful.
Thank you.
This goes for the group, but thank you guys for presenting today. What types of resources do you offer for the mental health of all these brave soldiers who go through experiences like this and the one we just learned today? Outside of all the medical treatment, I think shown a lot of mental strength to overcome the obstacle you've had to deal with. But for maybe those who struggle in that process and continue to struggle, what type of resources do you offer and invest back in for anyone going through a similar situation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so there are enterprise level programs that the DoD or the services have. And then, but for us at BAMC, we offer a variety of behavioral health services, both inpatient, then there's outpatient. We have peer programs for providers within the hospital. There's a variety of different kinds of programs. Do you want to talk about any? I don't know what what was your experience in terms of the ability to access some of those?
So for my case specifically, I got really lucky with this place. Generally, when it comes to amputee centers, there's a couple in the nation that you could either go to. Walter Reed, which is up in Bethesda, Washington, D.C. Depending on your branch, if you're Marines, for example, my girlfriend went through 29 Palms out in San Diego. But here in San Antonio, there's resources beyond you could ever imagine. The CFI is it's like a playground when it comes to medical research. There is basically two wings to the building. One, which is the intensive rehab programs like you saw in some of the pictures. But then the other side is all research and development. So they have rooms such as, there's one that, say if you were hurt in Afghanistan, what they can do is recreate a room for you with the sights, the sounds, the smell of gunpowder, and they can put you back in that environment with your prosthetic. So if you want to redeploy to that environment, you know how you're going to handle it and react. So you saw how I got emotional talking about this. This is probably the first time that's happened in 40, 50 times of me telling the story. But what they can do is kind of lower that chance. So if you redeploy, you're not going to have as strong of a reaction. There's another one, which is in that same department where they can teach you how to walk on terrain that's continuously evolving. So they can send a treadmill at you that has grass, it has sand, it has moving terrain, it has things you have to avoid and get out of the way of while they start increasing speed. That's just one side of it. That's just the training process. And then when it comes to financial opportunities, they're endless. I mean, between the car grant that I got, which completely paid for a brand new truck through the VA, and the housing grant I'm going to get, I don't think I'm going to have bills until I'm in my 30s. So it's an incredible, they really take care of us on a level that you guys wouldn't I can't understate it enough. It's incredible. It's beyond anything I would ever imagine.
And specifically with regard to, I think we're asking about behavioral health. So it's not one thing, it's a multidisciplinary approach. So every case is different, right? So like he mentioned, we have folks here that have traumatic injuries. We have folks here that have diseases like cancer and things like that. Every case is a little bit different. They have case managers, and the way that their case is managed is tailored to their needs, right?
Yeah, so I would add just a little bit to it. I think you were looking for like the capabilities, and we touched on a lot of those. And General Bagby's right. It's a case by case basis, and what team of people is put together to help that individual service member recover and face those adversities and get back to a condition of lifestyle that they would like to live. From behavioral health team, which is very robust, holistic, from all of our medical providers, from the surgeons to the rehabilitation team, but also we have engaged leaders that help that individual, and then volunteers that help that individual as well. And then I'm sure, Specialist Maes, you've experienced, a holistic group of people, the right people that we have on our team that have enabled you to go from where you were at with your injury to where you are today. I don't know if you want to touch on some of those that I think we'll get after the question you're wanting to ask.
A little bit, yeah. So I might have gone off topic there a little bit with that, but in that regard, in my multidisciplinary team alone at this stage in the process has shrunk. But when I first came in, I think it reached about 15 to 20 people. Between I had a psychiatrist, a psychologist, I had PT, OT, RT, I had between the financial advisors, transition advisors, and if there's a need that you have here, there's someone that you can approach that is assigned your case that you can reach out to and be like, hey, where do I need to go to talk about med board questions? Where do I need to go to talk about housing issues? If I want a service dog, there's someone else that I can go talk to that has a contact for that. So you're never left high and dry on that to find it on your own. There's always someone that you can find in your care team or your triad of care is what we call it, that you can approach with that.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thank you, guys. Sharmika had a question in the chat. She says, what is the best way that we can individually appreciate our service members? It seems like thank you for your service just isn't enough.
We were just discussing that's hard sometimes because, for those of us who raised our right hand and swore an oath to the Constitution, we did that freely. And so, I can't speak for Specialist Maes, but I'm sure, that for some people that makes them uncomfortable, right? I think that thank you for your service is enough. I'll tell you what I think. This is just me personally. Just be a good citizen. Pay your taxes, vote, all the rights and privileges that we enjoy as Americans, use them, exercise them. Just be a good citizen.
Yes, sir. I was going to make a very similar comment. We can't solicit for, positive feedback because we all volunteered to serve our country and defend, the American way of life and our freedom. And I appreciate when individuals, tell me thank you for your service when they see you in uniform. I truly appreciate that. But I agree with you, sir. Being positive contributors to society and doing unto others as you would like for them to do unto you, I think that's probably, reward enough, at least for me.
Thank you for answering that. I know General Bagby talked about how when people are well led and have a sense of purpose, that's really how you accomplish things. So would any of you guys mind sharing where you find your own personal sense of purpose?
Can you kick off that one?
Sure.
So when I was in my brief 2 years of my service, the biggest sense of purpose I had was I didn't buy into the whole system and community that they were trying to build at our unit just because that's who I was at that point in time. It wasn't a super healthy outlook on that. But what I did is I would just kind of put my nose to the grindstone and learn every single thing about my job that I could and become technically proficient. So when we're in a situation where 3 people go to look at something to do, like, I've never seen this before in my life, how do I approach this? That's like, oh my gosh, I have a purpose. I have something I can do. I know these weird little obscure things in the book that no one else bothered to read. I know the system forward, backwards, and upside down. And so I was a lot more personally driven than anything else to be the best that I could be and at least be as useful to my team as possible.
Yeah, I think for me, so there's 2 parts to that, right? As a provider, right, as an oral surgeon, and then as an Army officer, there's 2 different professions there that get blended. So oftentimes we as medics, we got into the provision of healthcare because we wanted to serve and help other people, to serve a human need, to make people healthy. And then you add that on to wearing the cloth of your nation and being willing to defend the Constitution. I think I've always got my sense of purpose. And I set that up that way because this is how I explain it to people, because most folks who come into Army medicine or the military health system often encountered healthcare first and then decided to come in the military. It's not everybody, but you'll find especially a lot of physicians, nurses, people with an advanced degree. And what I always tell people is that, I started out life really with a desire to be better at my craft, but what's kept me in uniform has been the amazing people that I've been able to encounter along the way. And the fact that we have such a unique mission, I can't think of any place else I'd rather be in terms of a practice model, in terms of the people that we serve, in terms of the mission that we do. It's made me immensely proud. It's what's kept me in the Army. Can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing.
And so for me, my purpose when I joined the Army was my family and a way to have, a means of income and to raise my kids. And as I grew in my military career, I learned the value of teamwork and people. And so I think the motivator for me to continue to serve and to drive forward is the opportunity to provide servant leadership to awesome soldiers like Specialist Maes and other soldiers, and see their personal accomplishments and to see them excel in their career. I think that's my personal motivator. The people that I serve with are just phenomenal. I love what I do.
And Sergeant Major's right. And to add on to that, I think one of the real value propositions of the military healthcare system, because I look at it, we don't own this. It's you, the American people, right? We're just caretakers. Taxpayers own this. But what I really love about, running a healthcare system like this is what makes us unique. We're not, private, and those are all great. We're not a public institution, and those are wonderful, and they teach too. But if you think about it, we as the military health system represent kind of this unbroken chain of trust between the military and our civilian population, because hopefully America's parents know that when they send their sons and daughters into the military, if they get hurt, they're going to receive the best care possible anywhere. Not just by people who are well trained, and we are, not just by people who are well funded, and thanks to the taxpayers, we are pretty well funded, but by people who care deeply about the patients we treat, because we're them. And that doesn't exist anywhere. That doesn't exist anywhere else except in an institution like this, in my opinion.
I got one more thing to add on to that one, sir. I really want to touch on that last point that he brought up, because with my injury, I had a lot of mental weight that came with it, a lot of image issues, a lot of confidence issues, being able to even go out and talk about my injury at first. But my doctor, my primary one that has taken care of me through this entire process, is former enlisted himself. He served in the Special Forces, and getting to sit down and talk with him and see that, he was me at some point, and he knows where I've been, and he's seen countless soldiers go through this process too. It builds that chain of trust like he was talking about. I know that anybody that works under him, I expect greatness that he's given me, and every time I talk to him, I can expect exactly what I've come to trust from him. So it makes it so much easier on someone like me who really had a lot of issues with it at first. He's kind of made me turn into this more confident, outgoing person when it comes to the injury and whole. So thank you.
Thank you all. And you can definitely see the passion that you guys have for the folks that you serve alongside with. So that's really cool to see. Does anybody else have questions? It looks like we have one more question. This will probably be, in respect of everyone's time, this will probably be the last one. I know it's been kind of a crazy year for everyone, but to focus on the positivity, what is one thing that you think will be a positive outcome of COVID-19? Like, life post COVID-19?
I already got my answer.
Well, I think that personally and professionally, I think that I can't speak for anybody else up here, but as a leader, I think it's times of crisis that really show you how good or bad your organization is, how well people adapt, how well people come together and shift and flex to make things work. And I have seen both within the San Antonio community and within our military community here at BAMC and other places, flexibility and agility that I could not have predicted was there. I think the other thing that it has taught us is it's forced us to look as an organization at how we provide the care. Care is quality, but how we provide it in terms of virtual appointments, telehealth, things like that, and force us to look at, can we do things better? So I would say those two things from a leadership perspective. Sorry, Major?
So just to add on to that, you know, something positive that could come out of COVID-19, that is an extremely difficult question given the operational environment that COVID-19 has, you know, forced all of us into. But I mean, look at what we're doing right here. We're doing a virtual class. And so I think the appreciation for small things that we maybe can't do anymore, like going to a movie theater and watching a movie. You know, some restaurants are open back up, so you can go now and enjoy a meal. Those things you weren't able to do for a while. So I think it's taught us the value of appreciating the small things in life. But I think it's also created, you know, adversity where we've had to come up with innovative ways to get around the adversity of COVID-19 to still move forward in life and still accomplish things that need to get accomplished. It's not like we can just put pause on life and stop. So I think as a community, we've found innovative ways to still deliver healthcare, to still defend, you know, the American way of life, to still be able to run the city of San Antonio. I think we've all found innovative ways to keep moving forward. So I think, you know, that would be a positive thing is, you know, our ability to overcome adversity. And it ties into the topic of courage, the courage to be able to do that.
I'm not going to be near as amazing as their guys as was, because they're both, you know, I don't have anybody else I'm in charge and except myself, but I do get to see the care team around me and how they reacted to all this, which was basically, I did have my life put on pause. I'm a non-essential worker. I'm still in care and they're getting ready to process me out. But for a personal level, what it made me appreciate was a lot of the friends and family around me. I normally am so busy with treatment and care that I don't get to talk to my family for weeks on end, but all of a sudden it became, you know, I have daily talks with my mother. I'll be playing a game with friends. I'll even sit down to do like a virtually watch a movie with a bunch of my friends, and we'll get together and watch something new that came out. So it kind of made me, in a weird way, closer to everybody because I don't have a ton of family here. So it was a nice eye opener to see that even through distance, it's not impossible to still have a nice social life and stay connected to everybody else. So
that appreciation for the small things.
Right.
Exactly. Simple conversations with loved ones.
Right.
Well, thank you all so much. This has been really great. I know in the chat, if you guys don't have it open, everybody's very appreciative of your candid answers and all of the little the nuggets of wisdom that you've shared today. So again, we really appreciate you. And I'm going to pass it back to Tyler real quick to kind of close up.
Thanks, Brittany, and well said. I mean, what an inspiring conversation, honestly, and much needed in a time like this. We've been virtual now since March. I think this feels like the longest year for everyone. But thank you, Brittany, and Daniel from BAMC for coordinating this. And a huge thanks to our panelists for sharing your experience, your insights, and knowledge. We are so thankful for your time and just thankful for all you do for our country. In an effort to show our appreciation, we do have a gift for you that we will send out once we are finally back in the office. I'm not sure when that will be, but it's getting closer and closer. But we will get that sent out to you all. So be expecting that sometime in the future. And just thank you all so much again. And thank you to all the staff who joined us today.
Thank you all. We really appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It's truly humbling. I'm so grateful to be here and get this chance to talk with you guys. So thank you.
Our pleasure, and humbled to have been asked to share our experiences with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Y'all take care.